Welcome to Rebel Without Applause, where we explore the intersection of sports, entertainment, and culture. I'm your host, Maurice Ball, and today we have a very special guest on the line. He is a retired NBA referee who patrolled the sidelines, making sure players adhere to the rules for over 30 years. And before he was a referee, he was a two-sport athlete at Atlantic's historic Morehouse College. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Derrick Stafford to the program. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here. Appreciate your time. I guess first off the gate, how you holding up during this pandemic?
Well, fortunately, I retired at the right time, so I'm just sitting at home watching the games on TV like everybody else, trying to stay safe, playing a little golf. So that's about it. Staying out of the way.
Hey, that's a good plan to have right there. This program is called Rebel Without Applause, and we like to start off with a question we ask everyone. When you look back at your life thus far, what would you say was your most rebellious moment?
I think one of the things that influenced me the most, and I still look back in amazement at it, when I was a kid, I grew up in segregation, so we couldn't play sports against white kids at all. We couldn't even go to school with them until I was in the 7th grade. But we didn't have a coach at our elementary school. The janitor was our coach, and he gave us a lot of good points. He talked about a lot of things. We saw how hard he worked every day, and he would take the time. We could walk to practice, so we would walk to practice every day, and he would be there for us every day. He would leave work a little early, sometimes take a lunch break, and I remember him just telling us, hey, no matter what happens to you in life, just make sure you respect your elders and never give up. And those two things stuck with me, I guess, for most of my life.
Cool. So I guess, a lot of times most people, they see referees at games, but, you guys kind of remain an enigma. Even me, I've covered NBA as a writer for years, and I've never once met or talked to a ref. What's it like on your side being what was it like being an NBA referee? And did you feel kind of invisible at times, or, were you kind of a celebrity in your own right?
Well, when I was first hired, I was hired by David Stern. And David Stern, we were protected by him. He kept us away from the media, kept us away from the teams. And all of that was by design, because he wanted the public to feel like the games were being refereed fairly and that the league office controlled the games. Well, that became a little bit of a problem, because now people thinking that the league, because of TV money, different revenue, that they kind of wanted to decide who won games. That was never the case. So at that point, they started giving us a little more visibility. We could talk to reporters, maybe talk to fans before the game or sometime even after the game. But my job was just to go out there and do the best I could. And the thing that was most important to me was to try to get every play right. My goal every game was to try to get every play right. So it didn't matter who was playing. It didn't matter what the situation was. I was just locked in on each play, one play at a time, trying to get the plays right. You don't always get them right. You make mistakes, but that was my goal every night, to get every play right.
And you mentioned mistakes. Was it kind of like, being an athlete where if you make a mistake on a game, you just have to kind of, shake it off and just go back out, for the next game?
Well, being a former athlete, it's a little bit different in the sense that you don't know. Like if you strike out, you struck out. No question about it. You drop a fly ball, you drop a pass, you fumble, you did it. You know at that moment. Our plays were so fast that I would never know for sure until I went back and looked at the tape. There were rarely any plays where I just knew right off the bat that I missed this play 100%. So I say that to say that I felt like I was pretty good at what I did, and I tried to stay focused for the full 48 minutes. And yeah, there are times where the players might coerce you into thinking you missed a play, even a coach. And sometimes in your own mind, you might think you missed a play. But I found a lot of times that I would go back and look at the plays, and a lot of times I was right. There are a few times that I was wrong, but you never really know until you go back and look at the tape.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. So let's go back to the beginning. You were a two-sport athlete at Morehouse. What sports did you play?
I played football and baseball.
Wow, football and baseball. Okay,
Yeah.
so no basketball. It's kind of
I played a lot of basketball growing up, but then when I was in school at Morehouse, I just decided to play football and baseball, gave basketball up. And that's how I started officiating, because during basketball season, that was my downtime. So I would kind of rest, try to catch up with my classes. And then one of my coaches was refereeing a little bit of basketball just to make a little extra money. He kind of talked me into it. So I started refereeing during school just to make a little money to carry me through baseball season till I could get into the summer. And I liked it. And when I graduated, I just continued to do it.
Wow. Okay, so you started in Morehouse,
Yes.
and then you kept on. So what kind of games did you officiate at first?
I started out with kids. I mean, 7-year-olds all the way through high school is where I started officiating. When you first start, you got to start somewhere. So that's pretty much where you start. You have all these youth programs that are all over the city. So I would go and work as many of those games as I could. And then eventually, as I learned more about the craft, I started doing older kids. Then I started doing high school. And then when I started doing high school, that's when I really enjoyed it. Felt like it was something I would enjoy. The fans were great. You know, the rivalries were great. So now I kind of felt involved. Even though I was playing sports at the time myself, I still felt involved in just being in those games. So that kind of encouraged me to continue to do it.
So referee was not something that you even thought of. It's just kind of one of those things that kind of fell in your lap. And you're like, wow, you know, I actually enjoy this. Let me look into it, you know, once I get out of school.
Man, I was brutal on officials. I don't know how. If it wasn't for my coach, I probably never would have started, because especially in baseball, man, if you struck me out on a third strike and I thought that pitch was outside, man, it took a whole lot to keep me from getting thrown out the game. But and in football, pass interference when I played DB, yeah, I would be on the officials. I would be on them pretty hard. Most of the officials in the conference kind of knew me by the time I graduated, so it was a surprise to me and everybody else that I kind of started officiating.
That's funny how life steers you in directions that you don't even see. So was like when you graduated Morehouse, was refereeing your first official job?
When I left, I took a job with Atlanta Life Insurance Company, which gave me the flexibility to now referee games, because I was selling insurance, so I had a flexible schedule, and I was still playing baseball in the summer, hoping that I would get a shot with somebody. So it was pretty flexible. It was my first job, and it was interesting, learning about the insurance life. And back then, they had the dollar policies and that kind of thing. It's amazing, what was going on back in the early days. But, some people policy ended up being worth $100 when they relatives passed. It was difficult being in that field, but I learned a lot about insurance, learned a lot about life.
Okay. So walk me through did you have a plan to go pro as far as NBA refereeing, or is that one of those things also that just kind of presented itself and you was like, okay, let me give this a shot?
Actually, I ended up having a plan and a procedure for what I was trying to do, and I had mapped things out for where I wanted to go. But initially, I had never thought about refereeing in the NBA. The whole time that I was doing high school, I never thought about the NBA. I thought a little bit about college. And then this man that I knew came out of the stands, who had a dry cleaners in my neighborhood when I was growing up. And he actually worked for New York Life. And he had come back from New York. He was there at a meeting, and he met the head of referee development for the NBA. And that was my first time ever even talking about pro basketball. I mean, I would watch pro basketball, I love pro basketball, but I never thought about officiating until he came out the stands and gave me that card. And so then I followed up with a phone call eventually, and then one thing led to another.
So, walk me through that. Is that kind of one of those things where they kind of scout you and see how good you are as a rep, or do you come and try out? Do you go through some sort of camp? Or, how does that work?
They have a very, very good program right now where they have people all over the country that'll go watch games, that'll go watch referees. You can send in your information via email. They'll eventually send somebody to see you work, or they'll invite you to a camp based on your resume. And then at that point, they'll put you in their summer league training program. They'll put you in the WNBA. They'll put you in the G League to prepare you now for going to the NBA. When I started, Only thing we really had was the CBA and Summer League. Summer League was our big thing where you would try to get in tip-top shape, be ready to go to summer camp, and that's where you would kind of prove yourself. And then in the CBA, you would basically just practice your craft. They didn't really have that many people to come see you back then because Darryl Garrison was really the only guy running the ship. But now they have a bunch of people that go observe, watch guys, so it's a little bit different. But the program that they have now is extensive.
Wow. So were you the type of learner where you got better as a ref and learned all the rules kind of in action, or were you kind of the ref that had to read the rule books and learn it better that way?
You're going to have to read the rule book. I mean, it's no way around it, because when a coach or somebody asks you a question, you're going to have to know the answer to it. So there are things that may happen in a game where you go back and look it up to make sure you're right, or you're not 100% sure about. But yeah, I put a lot of time in studying the rules. I even had friends of mine back even before they. Now you might be able to access this through video. I'm not really sure, but I had a friend of mine that would read the whole rule book on video. So when I was in my car, I could listen to the video while I was driving, and I could hear the rules, and that helped me to learn the rules even better.
Oh wow, yeah. So you have to be an encyclopedia of all types of rules, no matter what they are.
It's a lot, man, and anything unusual can happen any night. And games are protested, and a protest is the last thing you want on your record. So, and if you miss a rule, it can be protested if they feel like it affected the game. So you really have to be on top of your rules. So I never really stopped reading. Eventually I got to a point where I was pretty good and I knew things, and I would go back and rehash. But your first couple of years, I mean, you're in that book religiously.
Almost like your quarterback.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's why I laugh at a lot of guys that, play in the pro-am and play rec ball, play different things, and want to talk about the rules. And I say, man, honestly, have you ever even picked up a rule book? Ever? I say that would be like a minister never touching the Bible. So you think you know, but you don't know, because everything that you're saying is based on somebody else telling you. You never read this for yourself. So for you to say you don't know, because you're basing it on somebody else's opinion. I can say that I know because I read it for myself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you ref for 30 years. Can you remember? I know it may be going back a while, but do you remember getting the call to say, okay, you're going to ref your first NBA game? You remember that?
Yeah, I do. I remember the first call I got inviting me to camp. And then I remember the call I got telling me that I've been hired. Yeah, those are things that you really don't forget. I was working at the post office at the time, and when I got that call, I was like, oh man, what am I going to do? Am I going to quit? Am I going to just retire? I mean, what? Because I had been there like 9 years. So yeah, it was exciting, but then it was kind of nerve-wracking at the same time. Do you really want to take this job? I mean, things are going pretty good here now. You can work college and still do the officiating part of it. Do you want to now just give this up completely and now trust the NBA, to handle your life for the next 10, 15 years? So it was, you don't forget. And it was a tough decision also.
Yeah, I can imagine. Any chance you remember the game or the teams that were going on and where it was?
It's strange. People ask me that all the time, and I guess I maybe should try to find out or go back and look. No, but I mean, I was just so excited to get hired and to start. I don't remember the first game I worked. There are some games that I'll never forget, but I don't remember the first game that I worked.
So, obviously going from, college to the pros is a big jump no matter what, especially if you're a professional athlete. But as a ref,
Yep.
What were, I guess 2 or 3 top things that really kind of hit you in the face? It's like, oh, okay, wow, I'm at the pro level.
The first thing you notice about NBA basketball is conditioning. I mean, these guys are in great, great shape. And I know football players are in great shape too. But the thing about football and the thing about baseball, you do get a chance to come and sit down, even while the game is going on. Baseball, you get a chance to come in and sit down after you get 3 outs. Football, offense come off the field, defense come off the field. Basketball, man, these guys are running until they actually come out, or it's a timeout or a change of quarter. it's nonstop. And the first thing you notice is that shot clock. That 24-second shot clock makes all the difference in the world. I mean, you can't slow it down. You have to keep grinding. That's why it's going to be interesting to see if college ever goes to it. I mean, the 30-second clock for them is unreal. So I doubt if they ever go to the 24-second clock. But for years, and I'm not even sure now about the men. I know the girls went to 30 before the guys did, and it makes the game different. I mean, you're constantly running, you're constantly moving, trying to get that shot off and playing defense on the other end. And those guys, they're in great shape. Great shape.
Right. And even when they take a timeout, you probably have to huddle with your refs and make sure plays or whatever the case may be, and make sure your coverage and things like that. So it's probably nonstop no matter what the players are doing.
Yeah, definitely nonstop. You got to watch them cross each other. Make sure nobody says anything to the other person. Make sure the tempers don't start flaring. No little cheap shots. So now, by the time you actually relax, the timeout is over. So now you're getting them out the huddle, you back on the floor. So from a mental standpoint, I would always be mentally drained after the game, even if the game wasn't such that it drained me physically. It still would drain me mentally.
Yeah, because your head got to be on the swivel complete 100% of the time. So what kind of shape did you have to be in? Did you have to train kind of like an athlete too?
Oh, yeah, I did. I worked out with a few guys that played pro ball. Rope Man was a guy that I trained with a couple of times. He still trains athletes now. So I met a couple of trainers, would work out with them. When I worked out with some of the NFL guys, I would tell Rope Man, look, I'm not trying to play pro ball, so just don't, I'm gonna train with you guys, but I'm not trying to get killed. I'll have to go 2 days. And he still didn't care. He still would push me to the hilt. There are times where you be out there throwing up and I'm just trying to referee basketball, but I didn't mind pushing myself because I had gone through 2 days when I was in school. So I knew what it was like to train like that, even though I didn't have to now because my training wasn't quite the same as what they were getting ready to do. But it was still fun just being out there with guys that were pros at what they did and seeing them perform at that level, even just training. So it was fun. And then after that, I could do pretty much on my own. I would design my own workouts. Did a lot of jogging, 3 miles, 6 miles, 7 miles sometime just to get ready for the season. And then finally I was able to break it down just a little bit and not do quite as much, start riding the bike a little bit to take the pressure off the knees and whatnot. So, because I ended up having knee surgery, back surgery. So it takes a toll on you.
Wow. So, as a ref, what was your, favorite part of the floor to kind of, oversee? Did you like being on the perimeter, under the basket? What was your favorite part to kind of, officiate?
It changed over the years. When I first got hired, every team had a center, every team had a power forward. So when you went to the lead position, which is on the baseline, I mean, you had 2 physical guys going at it. And back then the rules were a little more flexible where guys could actually play physical. Guys cutting through the lane, got chucked. I mean, it was tough. So I kind of enjoyed that, being on top of my game, trying to keep it clean, trying to keep the guys from fighting, trying to keep them from going at each other. And then eventually the perimeter became the most exciting piece, when Golden State and all those teams started shooting threes. I mean, threes flying up on fast breaks. So the perimeter at that point, which is a trail position for us, became the most exciting position at that time.
So was it harder to rep? Because, when they changed the game like that, like you mentioned with Golden State and kind of the rules on the perimeter, you couldn't hand check and all of other things. Was it easier to ref kind of in the, harder more physical days, or when they kind of opened the game up, was that easier?
Oh man, the physical days were much tougher. They didn't score as much. I mean, you had points, 85, 90 points, guys just banging on each other, a lot of rebounds. Those games are tough when you're not scoring a lot of points because they're still getting the shots up because of the shot clock. But they're not going in because everybody's playing this hard-nosed, tough defense, passing to the post. So it's a lot of rebounding, a lot of pushing, a lot of cutting. That game was very tough. When they spread the floor, started taking a lot of threes, scoring 115, 116, 120 points a night, it's a different kind of game and you really have to be locked in and make sure jump shooters aren't getting fouled, and they're shooting from all over. And now you got to make sure you pick that 3-point line up before they brought in replay. So it's different, but that physical game was the toughest because, hey man, anything could happen at any moment. Somebody could go through the lane, somebody pop somebody with a forearm, and before you know it, you got both benches clearing. So that was tough.
It had to be tough, I imagine, to ref in the 80s and 90s with the Bad Boys and
Yeah.
Knicks, and I mean those teams were known for being bruisers and things like that. Did you have to find yourself kind of letting some things slide at least because people expected physicality, or
Yeah, people expected physicality, and the players, they understood. I mean, they were used to it, and you pop me on this end, I'm gonna pop you on that end. And as long as they kept it clean, as long as it didn't get dirty, as long as they didn't want to fight, you could kind of let them play a little bit harder than maybe you normally would because you didn't want to affect the game. But it was tough trying to make sure you stayed on top of it so that the tempers didn't flare, because in those days, it's not like today. Those teams did not like each other. They were not shaking hands. They were not hanging out together in the summer. They were not, sometimes the captain meeting, they wouldn't even look at each other. These teams, the NBA was different then. They did not like each other. There would be no hanging out, no joining clubs and talking to a player about coming to play with you next year. No. None of that.
No secret super team meetings.
No.
And back then too, they also had a lot of teams. They had what they call enforcers. It was their job to kind of go out there and put you on your butt if you try to come in the lane. Those types of things. Was it harder to kind of control those guys, or did you guys have kind of an understanding like, hey, don't get too crazy, or I'm tossing you. How did it go with those guys?
Well, like you just said, I understood sports a little bit, maybe more than some of my counterparts. So I always felt like it would be best just to talk to people. So I tried my best to talk to people. I ended up having a decent relationship with some of those guys that today I will call crazy, like Oakley, Anthony Mason. A lot of those guys were tough, mean, hard-nosed, but they were guys you could talk to. These weren't guys off the street playing basketball. These guys had gone to school. Most of them had college degrees or were very short. So it's not, they were intelligent. They were just hard-nosed. So I would always pick my moment where I would walk over and talk to somebody, walk over and talk to Rodman, walk over and grab him. Hey, man, hey, come on now. And they respected that because they wanted to stay in the game too, but they knew they had a job to do, and their job was to be the enforcer. Their job was to be physical, but my job was to keep it from crossing the line.
Do you feel like today's game is missing that, or is the game better with less of that?
It's a tough question. I've been watching the bubble, and this is probably the best I've seen them play in a long time. And I think people don't realize how tough the travel is. The fact that they're not having to jump on planes, get in hotels, pack their bags, travel, leave. I think they have extra energy right now, and this is why they're playing so hard, and this is why the games are actually pretty good. So based on what I'm seeing right now, I do think that the season is too long, 82 games. You're going to have some of those lulls where guys don't feel like showing up. And now they do that, what they call load management. So they do give guys some rest, which is probably the right thing to do, because some guys just not going to go out there and play on certain nights when they're tired or when they don't really feel like it. And it's best not to be on the court like that. You'll probably get hurt. So I think the game is still exciting. The game is super exciting. I love the NBA the way they play right now, but if they were playing the physical style of basketball that they were playing back in the early 90s, early 80s, I would like that as well. But I think it's super exciting now that we get to really see exactly how much talent they do have.
Okay. Now, you have 3 decades of experience, so this might be a tough question for you to even whittle down, but, who were maybe the top 3 toughest players that you had to referee, whether it's from an offensive standpoint or a defensive standpoint?
Oh shoot, my first 2 real easy. Allen Iverson, number 1. Karl Malone, number 2. And a guy like Reggie Miller would probably be right off the top of my head, thinking about it, he would be 3. I've always known my top 2, AI and Karl Malone, because those guys, especially at home, I mean, they would get that crowd involved. They would get them coming down on you. They would throw themselves to the floor like they've been killed. AI would go through the lane and just touch somebody and fall backwards. And, and I wasn't about giving him, I gave him what he earned. So we fought for years. I mean, we fought for years. He thought I didn't like him. I mean, he would say stuff in the press after the game. And Karl Malone wouldn't take it to that level, but he would throw himself in such a way, what we call now flopping, but he's actually just trying to draw fouls on the offensive end, no big deal. Do the same thing on the defensive end. And those 2 guys were just tough. And then going into Philly and going into Salt Lake City, I mean, those fans were crazy, especially Salt Lake City.
Real tough.
Oh, man, Salt Lake City, only game in town. It's what they were looking forward to every night, and they were diehard fans, and they were ridiculous. They stayed on you from the start to the finish.
Wow. I mean, so you had to kind of let things roll off of you, especially like in a Salt Lake.
Oh man, they might say anything to you. Yeah, and you definitely got to let it roll off, because all you're gonna do is get yourself in trouble. Yeah, they may get reprimanded or something, but then you're definitely gonna get in trouble for saying something back. So you just have to take it.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of stuff coming out about them now, but I imagine back in the 80s, 90s, they probably were just out of pocket.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Portland was another city. Oh yeah. Especially the cities that didn't have anything but basketball. I mean, time you walked in the airport, you just saw basketball paraphernalia all over the airport. People wearing the jerseys of their team. San Antonio, Utah, Portland, just to name it. And then Seattle eventually got a football team, but initially they didn't have either sport either. So those fans were crazy. They loved their basketball, and man, you caught it from the start to end.
Your mention of AI wasn't surprising, because he was known as, it almost seemed he sought out contact. He was just tough for a little guy. And, a lot of people respected him respected his game. But Reggie Miller kind of surprised me as making your list. What about him was tough? The way he would run through screens, or like what was
he would run through screens, run around screens, pull on screens. And then he would throw his body when he shot the ball. I mean, he had an unorthodox type of shooting motion, so you had to make sure he didn't get flicked on his elbow. He didn't complain a lot, as some of those guys did, but he was tough, because he was so thin. Any little piece of contact, you didn't know whether to give him the foul or not, because he was just so thin. The average guy might could take that little bump and finish, but for him, you really had to dissect the play because he was so thin.
Wow, and players like him and maybe Ray Allen, I feel like they revolutionized the art of running off of screens and running from baseline to baseline. You have Steph Curry doing it now, but I feel like Reggie Miller and Ray Allen really revolutionized. And Rip Hamilton.
I was about to say the guy that come to my mind first, man, is freaking running off of screens is Rip Hamilton. Yep.
Yeah, he was a master. What was it like kind of monitoring screens for him? Because I know it was tough to kind of, watch the whistle with those screens with a big guy. They had who they have? Rashid. They had
Lambert, Mahorn, Edwards.
Those had to be tough to kind of watch the whistle on.
They had a crew.
But they were effective, though. I mean, they really were able to free them, and they would be able to get that shot off so fast. Now, when you think about when you go from the toughest ones to referee from a officiating standpoint, what about the ones that quote unquote talk the most shit? I know you have some that talk shit amongst each other, but I know you had to have some that kind of came at you. Maybe kind of challenged you and maybe called you out of your name. Do you have some that you can recall that just kind of stood out from you?
No, I think it's a couple guys that may have had their moment, but I mean, I just would say that I've been blessed, maybe that it wouldn't boil over, it wouldn't go to the next game. I don't think anybody would be interviewed and say, I hated Derrick Stafford. I don't think anybody would say that, and there's no player that I would say that about. I mean, there are nights when you know, certain guys. I mean, I threw Barkley out of a game. I mean, there are nights when, you know, when people obviously not feeling their best for whatever reason, and you got to deal with them. But it never was personal for me. They know the next game I'm gonna be back to normal. Hopefully they'll be back to normal. So I didn't have any running feuds with anybody because I always let them know when I come back the next game, hey man, what you said last week is over. Let's just play. That's why I said I like communicating with guys, just letting them know. If you don't talk to people, then they don't have an idea. But if you walk up and say, hey man, hey, I heard what you said last game, but guess what? It's a good night. Let's just play. That will put them at ease. So now they don't think I'm really out there to try to pick on them. So because you know what they're thinking, and they think they know what I'm thinking. So it's just best to get it out there. So it's nobody that I really feel like I had AI was the toughest guy on me for a long time, him and Larry Brown. And it was because he felt like I wasn't giving him calls that he deserved. But what it was, I wasn't giving him calls that he was used to getting.
Okay.
Just because you're used to getting them doesn't mean that it was right. Because I'm looking at my tapes, I'm seeing what you're doing. I'm not calling these plays just because you're throwing yourself on the ground. And he was used to getting them every night, so it became personal. It was probably personal for about 5 years before we finally one night met out and we ran at each other out in the street. And then we kind of talked about it, and from that point on, we were cool.
So you mentioned something I hadn't really thought about this, but you know, as a ref, you have to watch gameplay as well, so you can kind of understand the mechanisms and mannerisms of all the players.
Oh yeah.
Oh wow. Okay, I didn't know that.
I mean, even so much, if I'm aware of what kind of defense they like to play, like some teams like to go under screens, some teams like to go over screens. Back in the day when people weren't really taking a lot of threes, most of the time where they would go under the screen. So that would help me in determining whether the screen was legal or not. When it got rolled to the basket, I would have a better feel for what type of offense they're running, so I would know kind of what to expect in certain situations. Will prepare me for trying to get plays right.
Oh wow!
Know who your good defenders are. Know who likes to hand check. Know who's a little dirty. I mean, all of that. I mean, it really helps you, particularly at the pro level, because it's at your disposal. I mean, if I'm not working, why shouldn't I be watching a game to help my crowd?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I never thought about that, but that makes a lot of sense. So you know kind of what's going on and what might happen before it happens and things like that, and you keep things under control. So yeah, that's something I hadn't thought of before. You know, one of the people that comes to mind, and I know you know, I don't know how many times you've had a chance to reference him, but you know, especially with the documentaries came out, Michael Jordan. You know, he seemed like he was the kind of player that was always talking to the refs and trying to get you know, calls or trying to find out why this call wasn't happening or whatever the case may be. Did you have a lot of run-ins with him as far as you know, asking about calls or talking about calls or disputing calls, things like that?
I had a lot of respect for Mike, and I think he had a lot of respect for me because he worked hard. I mean, anybody that works hard, I'm gonna have a lot of respect for. And he played hard every single night. It didn't matter who they were playing against. He came with the same energy. Yeah, he's like a lot of other guys. You know, Michael felt like he didn't do anything wrong. He felt like he was right 90% of the time. But the thing that I will give him credit for that I criticized LeBron for a little bit is Michael didn't complain if he knew he didn't get fouled. I mean, at least in his mind, he had to feel like he got fouled. Nobody ever just blocked his shot or stripped him clean, and then he come to you complaining because he was embarrassed. Michael didn't do it like that. So if Michael came to you, 9 times out of 10, it was a little substance to it. So you would at least maybe go back and look at it on tape to see if you missed something. A lot of people say that Mike cried a lot and said he asked for calls and he got a lot of calls. I just don't remember it like that. Michael didn't talk that much. Okay. I had very few conversations with him out on the floor. I mean, I knew him off the floor, but we had very few conversations on the floor. But he also understood. Michael knew my personality. I mean, he knew that when I walked out there, I wasn't about joking. I wasn't about playing. I was about, hey, man, trying to get this game right for 48 minutes. And that's how I walked on the floor every night. So he knew my personality as well. I mean, he knew when I was getting ready to call a technical foul on him. He would say, oh, you about ready to call a tech, aren't you? I said, all right, Mike, keep talking.
So you give him a warning.
Oh, yeah. They know. I mean, when you've been around guys for 15, 16 years, I mean, they know you just like you know them. So, and actually, you don't need that long. But if you've been around somebody, you've been playing basketball or football, and you've had this guy for 5, 6, 7 years, you pretty much know his personality. He knows your personality. So now it's just a matter of you trying to communicate to make your job easier and for him to understand what it is you have to do. So that's why I said I was easy to talk to. I would let them know how I felt. I would let them know when I had enough. And they knew. I mean, I would give Michael that look like, okay, you're about to cross the line. And he would know, all right, well, let me go on in. I mean, even one game, he did it, and he knew he did it. And I called a check on him. I think I might have called one check on him, maybe two. He said, you liked it. That felt good, didn't it? He said, you've been waiting to do that, haven't you? I said, no, but you put me to the point where I had to. I said, now, well, you going about your business?
Yeah, so that sounds like something you'd say.
Yeah, so that's the kind of relationship we had, you
know. And what was your take on the so-called Jordan rules, where the Pistons had this kind of way they played him, and it was really kind of dirty. Did he complain through that, or he just kind of sucked it up and just kept on coming?
Michael never complained. He sucked it up. He's one of the first guys to get a trainer, to take his trainer on the road with him. I mean, Michael knew. He even said in the documentary, he had to buff up. But not only him, Scotty was the key. Michael had to get Scotty to a point where he could take the pounding. Michael got to a point where he could take the pounding. I mean, he knew what to expect, and he knew how. And Michael also knew how to deliver blows as well, even on the offensive end. He had to get Scotty where he could take the punishment. That's why they couldn't beat Detroit at first, because Scotty could not step up to the plate. Scotty could not handle the punishment. Scotty could not go to the basket and take the fouls. And so once Michael got all these guys on the weights and got Scotty bigger and stronger, that's when they finally realized they could beat Detroit.
Wow.
But Michael never complained, man. Michael was just tough. I mean, Michael played a little football growing up, so he had a little toughness about him. So and that's the way he played. That's the way he carried himself. And yeah, Detroit, they beat him up. You knew every time you had Chicago, Detroit, it was going to be a battle. And every time Michael went to the hole, they were going to try to put him on the floor. I mean, he knew that. But he played through it. Scotty couldn't take it.
Ah, okay. Now, I know, as a fan, I'm able to kind of look at the game and watch it and enjoy it. But as a referee, you're out there, got to make decisions, on a moment's notice. Do you ever find yourself at any point in the game able to enjoy something like a sick pass or an alley-oop or something, or are you able just kind of, you have to put that to the side?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've probably had like 4 or 5 plays throughout my career where I said, wow, like, woo. Just, something unusual, because you're out there with such superior athletes that you see this stuff like every night. I mean, every night you're going to see something crazy, but every now and then you're going to see a play where you go, man, how did he do that? Wow. But you say that, but then you're right back to what you got to do.
Yeah. Do you recall one of them that kind of made you stop for a second?
Man, Westbrook freaked me out one night where he lost the ball, and the guy picked it up, and the offensive player was breaking free on the other end. And so he was lobbing the ball over Westbrook's head to the guy on the other end. And man, I don't even know how Westbrook got up and caught it and stole that pass in the air.
Oh, wow.
I mean, that was one of the plays that freaked me out that I still talk about to this day. He lost the ball, the guy got it, and he tried to throw it over his head to a guy who was going free for a layup on the other end. And Westbrook jumped up. He probably was about 10 feet from him, jumped up and caught that pass. And I mean, I couldn't believe how high he jumped. And it just could have been me that night, could have been my imagination. I don't know. But it just shocked me when I saw it. And that's one play that I'll never forget.
Wow, yeah. I mean, there's always, when you think back about games, there are things that really stand out. And I was curious, as I know you get to go watch tape. I was like curious, were there moments where you were actually in it and like had to stop and be like, wow, that was something else right there. Something that kind of strikes me from a referee standpoint is, do you remember the first time you saw, and to me, even now to this day, it looks like a travel to me, a Euro step? when you first saw a Euro step, did you know right away that it wasn't a travel? Did you have to kind of look at it again? Like, what was the Euro step revolution like for you as a ref?
Oh yeah, when it came from overseas, it was new to us. So we had never seen a guy hesitate while going to the basket or go from right to left while going to the basket. We were always used to guys going straight, going forward. So we had never seen a guy go right to left, back, and shoot a layup. So yeah, the first time it was like, wow. So yeah, at that point now we go to the videotape. The league goes to the videotape, studies the play. We get a memo telling us what this is, how to enforce it, what to look for. So they constantly stay on top of stuff like that, and they tell us what they want us to do. So there are times that there are things that may look like a travel and might even be a travel to somebody that's just played basic basketball. But the NBA will say, well, we're not going to say he picked the ball up until he actually brings it in. So we're not going to count that first step. See, these are the kind of things that the NBA would do that a lot of people just don't understand. Because in order to get call a travel, you have to first establish when the guy picked the ball up. So if I say that he picked the ball up late and he took that first step, when you're saying that when he brought it up, he had possession. Okay, now you're going to see 3 steps, but I saw 2 steps, and that's the way we allow the referee, and that's what a lot of fans don't understand because we don't communicate it enough to them to understand. But back to your Euro step, yeah, we had to study it, watch it, and now all the guys are learning how to do it. And it's not a travel. They just go they go slow, or they go quick, or they go from the right to the left, but they still just taking 2 steps. So it's different because we've never seen it. Now we're getting used to it because so many other guys are doing it, but it's legal.
And another move that stands out to me that it still looks like a travel to me, even though I know it's technically not, James Harden's step back. That looks like a travel all day, but
if I was a commissioner, it would be a travel. But like I said, they allowing him to bring that ball back on that first step, and then they're saying he didn't get possession until he brought it down and paused it. So now he's moving again and shooting. So we're allowing an additional step, in my opinion, but they're saying that it's not. So, but the thing about our league that I like, all the guys know what's going on. So if you see Harden doing something and you think it's a travel and the league has said that it's legal, hey, you do it. And that's what they do. And so they start practicing those moves. So it's not an advantage. It's not like Harden is the only one we're going to allow to do this. He's just the first one to start doing it. But Damian Lillard, Westbrook, Chris Paul, y'all want to do the same move? Go ahead. Luka brought, he's great with that Euro step. Hey, y'all better get in the gym and work on it yourself. Because if it's legal and he can do it, you can do it too.
And something that strikes me about Harden, and it kind of compares to kind of what you do. It seems to me like, and I don't know if he does it or not, but it seems to me like he studies that referee rule book. Like he knows, he draws more fouls than anyone. He knows how to get fouls. Why do you think he's figured out a way to get that whistle to blow his way so much?
Well, Houston did something like what I'm doing for Minnesota now. Like with Minnesota, I work as a consultant for them, where I can kind of get in some insight on certain things that they can do to possibly get away with something, or something they can do to use to their advantage. They were one of the first teams that would hire a retired referee along with Dallas. So they had people to come in and show them certain things that they could do. And some of it Harden learned on his own, but some of it he was educated by some of the guys that had retired. But the thing that he knows is if you extend your arm out from your body, I can go to you and it's going to be a foul on you. So that's one of the things he learned real early, and that's what he does. He hunts. When you stick your arm out, he hunts it. And you have no choice. You have to call a foul because your hand is outside of your body. Your hands have to be up. And so as soon as he sees that, he goes straight to your arm. And even though he may not be shooting, he knows he's got a foul. And he's one of the best at it. So I'm going to also give him credit because He's probably studying tape. He's looking at guys. He knows when he drives through the lane. He knows what guys stick their hands out. He knows what guys go straight up. So he knows who to go into who body. He knows who to search out for their hands. But this is all they do. All they do is play basketball and look at games as well. Wow. It doesn't take all day to do that. So you still got time to do many other things that you want to do. If you put in an hour outside of the gym and just studying your craft, you still have plenty of time to do what else you want to do.
Yeah, I mean, he looks like one of those very cerebral players to kind of get you out of, off balance some kind of way, and he's getting it fouled. He's getting you. He's probably one of the most fierce offensive players I've seen in a long time. Since maybe Jordan, obviously.
Oh, he's very, very smart. I have to give him his props for that. Very smart player.
So when you think about like you said, Harden and the Rockets, what do you think about the kind of the analytics revolution in basketball? And from a referee standpoint, how did you see it kind of transform the game we have today?
The easy answer is it just created a lot of jobs for other people. I mean, that's basically what it did, number one. But number two, yeah, there are a lot of stats out there. Now, how many of these stats actually will help you? I mean, how many of these coaches actually use these stats going down the stretch? I don't know. Like tonight, for an example. I mean, Denver knows who their best three-point shooters are. They know who shoots better in the corner. They know who shoots better top of the key. So if the game is on the line, are they going to run a play for the shot in the corner? They're going to run a play for shot top of the key. Do they really know who's the best shooter in that position? Do they know who's the best shooter under 2 minutes? I mean, they have all these stats. I mean, are they really using them? I think in some cases they do, but it's probably overblown. But it creates jobs, it creates curiosity. It gives people something else to talk about. But how much Malone will actually sit down and use these stats tonight in determining what he does throughout the game, I doubt it. He's going to put his best team out there. They're going to play hard. They're going to decide whether they're going to switch, how they're going to switch on defense. They got to decide how they're going to play the pick and roll. Yeah, they're going to look at the analytics, but at the end of the day, it's just going to be basketball tonight.
So really, if you have a tool belt, it's just like an extra tool in the tool belt.
Just an extra tool in the toolbox. You might use it, you might not. Your assistant coach might could say something to you that you didn't think about because he's got the stats right there in front of him. So, yeah, that could possibly play into something. The play, like replay, how many times is goaltending overturned? How many times is a block charge overturned? Yeah, they're going to have all those stats. So that might encourage them to go ahead and use their one replay on that particular play as opposed to using it on something else. So it has some value to it. At the end of the day, I don't know if it's as valuable as what people think it is.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the things I'm curious about is, Daryl Moore is kind of, the mad scientist behind it, or at least,
yes,
most prominent. And, they just got, D'Antoni chose to leave the Rockets, and I'm wondering if they're going to keep Morey, because if they move on from Morey, that's going to say a lot about the whole analytics, viewpoint anyway. So, kind of one of the things I'd be remiss if I didn't ask, going back to, it must have been tough to be a referee when the whole Tim Donaghy scandal happened. During that kind of a time, how tough is it for you as a peer, a referee that still has to go out there and still do games when you have a scandal like that happen, within your ranks?
I was in shock like everybody else. I mean, I never would have believed it. If somebody had told me on the street that this was going on, I never would have believed it. And once it came to fruition, we had to accept the fact that something was done. The thing that you have to fall back on is I know that I wasn't involved in it. I know that I would never do anything like that. So that's what I had to keep reminding myself. When fans would say certain things about, oh, you must have money on the game tonight, that kind of thing. I mean, I knew what I was doing and what was going on in my world, so I didn't let that affect me. yeah, it was a tough period where people took their shots and we lost a lot of credibility for a little bit of time, but for the most part, we fought through it. And like I said, I just constantly reminded myself, hey man, I don't have anything to do with this, didn't know anything about it. And so whatever happens, happens.
How long did it take before you felt like, people had kind of moved past it and just kind of gave, you guys back your righteous credibility and your status in being true arbiters of the game?
Well, a lot of things about what we did as a staff would change forever. Like cell phone use in the locker room, things like that. I mean, it was a lot of little changes that they made that I guess they had to do to make people think that they were covering their bases, which really changed our lives forever. But after about a year, the fans, pretty much got over it. People stopped talking about it. Players stopped talking about it. So, but for us, it was not over because our whole way of life had been rearranged because of it. But, it was just another adjustment you had to make in life. That's all.
So kind of like the whole going to the airport is completely different after 9/11. TSA.
Oh, yeah. That's a great analogy. I mean, from just walking to the gate, now you're going through security. Now you got to take everything out of your pocket. Initially you had to take everything out of your bag. So yeah, it was a new way of life, and you just had to adjust to it.
Yeah, I can imagine. And now, now that you've retired, is it hard to watch games on TV and not kind of see it through the eyes of a ref, or have you kind of moved past the point where you can just look at it as
I love seeing it through the eyes of a ref. I mean, I love being able to see it through the eyes of a fan and listen to the announcers. I mean, it's just, to me, it's an added pleasure now that when they go to replay, I can kind of think about what would I do in this situation? What are they doing? Would I have gone? Did I need replay on this? So yeah, so I can talk about the game from a different perspective, and I'm enjoying it from a different perspective. But I still appreciate how good the players are. Now I can actually watch them play and enjoy them play. Where in the past I would just strictly try to stay professional and just try to watch and learn from the game. But now it's the best of both worlds. I can enjoy the game, enjoy the dunks, enjoy the blocks, the steal, the trips. And then I can look at the refs like, man, dang, he was out of position. How did he call that?
You're like, but see, like a lot of people can do that, but then you can be a real Monday night quarterback. You can like, okay, I know the rules, and that should have been called or whatever. So
yep,
that's a little different. I feel like the NBA really did a great job under pressure and had to pivot with this whole pandemic. They came up with this bubble idea. I think they're leading all sports with how they've been able to accomplish it with no hiccups, barely. And they really put on a really great product. What do you think about how they were able to put this together, during this whole pandemic and still put out a great product like they have?
It was this was incredible. I'm still kind of blown away that they were able to pull this off. But I can honestly say that this was so difficult that I don't think this will ever happen again. I don't think they'll ever be able to get these players to go and stay isolated like this to play basketball for 2, 3, 4 months. I just don't think it'll ever happen again. So hopefully we can get back to normal, because it's incredible that they didn't have, many people sneak out. Maybe 1 or 2 guys tried to sneak out. 1 or 2 guys got in trouble. Man, it's tough being stuck in one place like that, being away from your family, even the referees. So this is definitely, in my mind, will be a one-time thing, and hopefully things can kind of get back halfway to normal, because I still don't know how they pulled it off. To me, this has been miraculous, in my opinion, to be able to pull this off.
And like, I expected some infractions, players doing this, that, and the other, but the fact that they haven't had any infections, nobody else catch it in the bubble, which would have really wrecked the whole thing. That's the part that's really impressive to me. That they were able to sign.
Do you really think you would know if somebody had it?
Well, that's another part.
You think they're gonna blow up the whole bubble because 2 guys fire? Heck no. No.
Yeah.
They would not tell you.
Yeah, you make a really good point.
Yeah, they would play through it because see now they have enough information to know, the severity of it. They know whether it can be transmitted with some of the testing that they have available now. And these guys are young, and I promise you, they would play through it. They would not say we have 2 players on the Lakers with the virus. They wouldn't say we got 2 players. They would. I don't think they would do it. It would destroy everything if they did, because now, what if LeBron came down with the virus?
Oof, that's a big one.
I mean, you gonna postpone the finals? What are you gonna do?
Yeah, that's a big one.
So as much as I love the NBA, I don't I don't think they would be forthright with that one. I just think they would keep that under the hat and keep it rolling.
So one thing I thought I saw that was pretty cool. The refs had like this march on campus, last month where they were protesting, police brutality and kind of to show support with the NBA players.
Right.
You feel like that's kind of in line with what you would have done if you were still playing? I mean, still reffing?
Yeah, I'm sure I would have, voiced something. I was a leader when I was on staff. I was on the executive board for 3 terms. So I'm sure I would have come up with something for us to do other than just going to the game. Taking a knee thing, I would have thought about it, because I look at it a little bit different, because to me, I think it's showing complete homage to the flag by taking a knee. I mean, I would much rather us lock arms and stand up and do it that way. And just that's because of my religious belief. I just don't, I'm not taking a knee to a man, and I'm not taking a knee to a flag. That's the way I look at it. Do I think they're wrong for doing it? Absolutely not. I mean, I think and this is why I'm confused with America, because you're paying ultimate respect by taking a knee. Now, if they turn their back to the flag, I could see people being in an uproar. But I don't understand this taking a knee to the flag and people thinking that's showing disrespect. To me, that's showing ultimate respect. To the extent that we're going to have to talk about this. You want me to take a knee? Doing the national anthem? Oh, no, man. I'm taking a knee to God. I'm not taking a knee to this flag. I mean, we need to talk about this. Let's lock arms or something, And that's just my perspective on it. And I've talked to some other people about it, and they say, you know what? I never looked at it like that. That's, you might be right. I said, well, that's just the way I look at it. I think that's showing ultimate respect. And it was showing respect. I mean, nobody was trying to show disrespect to the flag or the national anthem or to the country by taking a knee. They were just bringing attention to a situation, and they were doing it in a very respectful manner. Now, if the guys had turned their back on the flag, now that would have been like, okay, now you're asking for it, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So
what kind of go ahead.
But so to get back to what you asked, it was good to see my coworkers, make a stand and try to show some support. It was great seeing that.
Yeah, to your point, what gets lost in the sauce, especially when you track it back to Kaepernick, he was just sitting on the bench until he had a talk with a Navy SEAL who said, hey, it would be much more respectful if you kneel. So that's right to your point. He did that in order to show more reverence and more respect, and say, hey, it's not about the flag or whatever. I'm trying to show respect while I'm also trying to call attention to this cause. And people just choose not to take that particular part in when they weigh the situation.
Right.
And it's true too, because when the Texans played the Chiefs, they locked arms, and it wasn't during the anthem or the flag or anything else. It was quote unquote a show of unity, and they booed that.
Yep.
That tells you everything you need to know. They just don't want you to bring up any kind of equality conversation whatsoever. They just want you to shut up and dribble, or shut up and throw a football, or whatever it is you're doing. They don't want to hear anything else. Well,
I've had a couple of people give me their side of it, which I kind of get. I'm more in line with you, where I think people just use it as an excuse. But there are a lot of people that have said to me, man, I just when I watch a game, I just want to get away from everything. I want to get away from everything. And I can kind of understand that. You just want to relax and watch a game, because, man, right now, 24/7, something's going on with the election, something going on with this politician, something going on with that politician, something going on in this particular city. So from that perspective, I get it. You want to turn a game, sit down, have your cold one, and just chill. And the people are saying, man, I just don't want to. I mean, I respect Black Lives Matter, man, but I do not want to turn on the game and be listening to social issues. So I try to look at it from both perspectives. I get that, but I also get what the players in the league perspective is as well. So the booing, I mean, you could have just kept quiet. You didn't have to boo if you didn't like it. But by the same token, I understand people just want to see people play ball.
Yeah, I'm just curious. Like, not that I want time to go by fast or anything, but I'm curious down the line, how will we all look back on this time? Because during his time, Martin Luther King was looked at as an agitator, and nobody liked him, and all this other stuff. And he was doing the same thing, just kind of disrupting people's lives, as far as civil rights. And then now he's revered and loved. Him and Muhammad Ali, for instance, he was looked at as a draft dog, all these other things, and just kind of hindsight 2020. Now they're looking back like, wow, those guys were heroes. So I'm really curious to see down the line, what this time will look like. Were we on the right side of history or not? Before I let you go, I gotta get your thoughts on the last 4 teams left. Who do you like coming out of the East, and who do you like coming out of the West?
Whew. Just like you, man, your guess is pretty much good as mine. But I tell you, I've said this from the beginning. I like the Clipper team, but I still thought the Lakers were the team to beat. And so far, I'm gonna just stick with that. I still think the Lakers are the team to beat, and I don't see anybody that's going to be able to beat them right now. Even though I like Denver, Denver's young, athletic, but I don't see anybody beating the Lakers. Now, as far as the East goes, I still think Boston can do it, but they got to make some adjustments. I mean, in my opinion, Tatum has got to realize that he doesn't have to take these tough shots. He can get other people open where they can take easier shots. And I think if he does that, I think Boston stands a pretty good chance of winning. But if he keeps trying to do it on his own and keeps trying and taking all these tough shots, Miami's going to mess around and beat him. And
I like what Miami's doing.
And either way, now Denver will be the dark horse. If Denver were to win, I mean, just looking at it from a marketing standpoint, that's going to be a downer a little bit for the NBA, even though their team is exciting. But either way, if the Lakers win, whether it's Lakers in Miami, now they got the whole narrative about LeBron being in Miami. Now Miami getting a chance to beat LeBron. And so that'll create some excitement. And then you have the Laker-Celtic rivalry. You can create some excitement. Yeah, so the league is looking good right now. They really can't go wrong either way. I think they would probably prefer more of a Laker-Boston matchup just because of history and because of the star players on each team. They're a little more visible. But, hey, man, Miami's tough, and they play hard. And Miami going at LeBron would definitely be interesting as well. So right now, my 2 picks to answer your question will be Lakers and Boston.
Okay, and you already said the favorite is Lakers coming out, so yes. Lakers all win. I don't have a dog in the fight, so I'm just looking at more towards not even marketability, because I know Lakers Boston would be probably the most marketable. But I really like, from a team perspective, I like what Miami's done. Miami getting Jimmy Butler really flew under the radar because everybody was on Kawhi watch. Where's he going? Things like that. And they slid in and took him, and he changed the culture from day one. And, they just had that throwback team look. They remind me of a 2004 Detroit Pistons when they won. And they were just a complete team, not necessarily a superstar, quote unquote, but everybody knew their role. Everybody could do their role to the highest of their ability, and they could get it done. And they had, confidence, and they had so much confidence that they made you believe it. And I feel like Miami's that team. Now, if they get out of the East, like you said, it's going to be a really tough out to go against LeBron. I mean, LeBron is just incredible. So even though I'd like to see Miami come out of the East, I really can't see them getting past LeBron, although it'd be kind of a cool story. But I see the Lakers winning it and kind of paying homage or honoring Kobe Bryant, of as a nice little, cap to the season. And that would be a really great story. Because they hadn't even made it this far since Kobe did it, and to now come and do it and kind of do it for Kobe. I really think that would be a great.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. That's a great ending.
Yeah. So we'll see who's right. I'll keep notes, and we'll see who comes out right on that prediction. But hey, it's been a huge pleasure having you. Really thank you for carving out some time. And to all the rebels out there, thank you for hanging with us. And make sure you like and subscribe to this podcast, and stay tuned for our next show. We drop each and every Thursday on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, all of the platforms where you like to get your favorite podcast. So for my special guests, Derrick Stafford and myself, we'll see you next time. And please stay rebellious.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you.